Why did the 1991 Gulf War shock the entire world? Just look at what the U.S. did on day one, and you'll completely understand. On January 17, 1991, the U.S. launched the famous Operation Desert Storm, unleashing a full-scale assault on Iraq. At the time, military scholars around the globe predicted that U.S. forces would suffer the same fate as the Soviets in Afghanistan, getting bogged down by Iraqi forces, then trapped in the quagmire of urban warfare, ultimately forced to admit defeat. However, the U.S. military took only 42 days, just over a month, to completely crush Iraq's 77 divisions, an army of 1.2 million troops, forcing this so-called third strongest military power to surrender. So why was the U.S. military able to unleash such terrifying combat power, defying the world's expectations? It's because on day one of the war, America deployed 4 killer moves. Even if Iraq knew what was coming, they couldn't stop it. First, the opening killer move, deploying special forces for comprehensive infiltration operations. The U.S. Delta Force's reputation is legendary in the international community. Armed with the world's most comprehensive and advanced weaponry, they received their orders at the very start of the Gulf War, infiltrating Iraq from every angle like snakes and insects. Their primary mission, one objective: locate and destroy Iraq's air defense capabilities. Contrary to what many might imagine, Iraq had actually invested heavily in air defense infrastructure, contracting European nations to build numerous air defense positions and related command systems. Among these were Soviet-made Scud missiles. Iraq organized these air defenses into mobile launch sites, specifically designed to strike and harass U.S. air targets. They were the most troublesome obstacle facing the U.S. Air Force. But shortly after Delta Force went into action, Iraq's mobile Scud positions suffered devastating losses. Massive numbers of launchers were destroyed, causing serious cracks in Iraq's air defense shield, giving the U.S. a critical strategic advantage. You could say tearing open this first breach and tilting the battle toward a one-sided affair. Delta Force absolutely deserves top credit. It was the opening punch in America's combination. An elite special forces unit is like a sharp blade. No matter how tight the defenses, they can find a breakthrough. In the war's opening phase, using special forces for infiltration operations became a classic case study for future conflicts. This is the definition of getting maximum bang for your buck. Once special forces complete their mission, it creates an immeasurable impact on frontline combat. Next up, the second killer move, information-based electronic warfare. Electronic warfare aircraft are common today, but back in 1991, they were cutting-edge technology. Iraq had spent big money in all major cities and strategically critical areas, deploying massive amounts of fire control radar. Over 200 air defense missile sites dotted the entire country. If U.S. aircraft just flew in recklessly, they'd suffer tremendous losses. That's exactly what Iraq was counting on. Then they watched the U.S. pull out a new toy. The U.S. already had F-4G Wild Weasel anti-radar aircraft, organized into electronic warfare squadrons for the Gulf War. These electronic warfare planes instantly released wide-area electromagnetic jamming, directly shutting down Iraq's fire control radar air defense systems. Then they completed the first wave of destruction on Iraqi ground missiles and flew off without encountering any resistance whatsoever, leaving Iraqi forces staring helplessly, with no recourse. Third, the U.S. deployed massive naval forces. The Gulf War's shock factor came largely from the overwhelming power of the U.S. Navy. Before the war even started, Iraq already felt pressure like a mountain. The U.S. deployed 6 carrier strike groups to the Persian Gulf and Indian Ocean. These formed the planet's most powerful combat units, carrier battle groups, completely blockading the seas surrounding Iraq. But just when everyone thought that was it, something even more stunning happened. After the U.S. assembled a coalition through the UN, Britain and France decided to join the party. Britain sent 1 carrier. France went even bigger, sending 2. Suddenly, 9 aircraft carriers converged on the Gulf region. For Iraq to see this lineup and still want to fight showed tremendous courage, you gotta admit. According to the data, in the opening phase of the Gulf War, the U.S. Navy launched over 190 advanced Tomahawk missiles, obliterating critical Iraqi infrastructure. Finally, the fourth killer move, deploying the world's first stealth fighter, the F-117 Nighthawk. Today, stealth is a mandatory feature for 5th-gen fighters, but in 1991 the effect was absolutely shocking, especially since Iraq's eyes had already been blinded by the preliminary strikes. The Nighthawk could truly operate with impunity. Iraq's remaining radar systems simply couldn't detect this stealth aircraft, let alone lock on and destroy it. On day one, the F-117, using laser-guided bombs, directly destroyed 2 Iraqi radar warning stations, then actually went on to bomb Baghdad's Air Command headquarters. From that moment on, for Iraq, the war had reached a point of no return. In just 5 minutes of the F-117's offensive, one stunning scene after another unfolded. Without any air raid warnings, critical Iraqi military-industrial facilities were reduced to rubble, and every strike was incredibly precise, rarely causing collateral damage to surrounding areas. At this point for Iraqi forces, It was hard to say which was worse, the actual physical losses, or the overwhelming psychological terror. They couldn't even see the enemy's weapons. In some ways, this was even more terrifying than the carriers. Supported by logistics and resupply, F-117s flew over 200 sorties in short order, conducting decapitation strikes on key Iraqi strategic targets. This stealth fighter, invisible to radar, clearly exceeded Iraqi forces' comprehension. Air Defense HQ, presidential palaces, telegraph and telephone exchanges, all bombed. President Saddam himself nearly got taken out. Faced with such a gap in weapons technology, Iraq found itself with strength it couldn't use. Whenever they threw a punch, it hit nothing but air, unable to create any meaningful reversal in the war. After these 4 coordinated sea-land air strikes, less than 2 hours into the war, over 90% of Iraq's military facilities were destroyed. All air forces were paralyzed. Lambs to the slaughter? What terrified nations most at the time was that the U.S. didn't hide its combat operations, broadcasting live for 24 hours straight, showing the whole world how modern war is fought. Though the Gulf War lasted 42 days, the decisive ground combat took only 100 hours. In other words, the U.S. took roughly 4 days to completely defeat Iraqi forces. Everything after was just cleanup. This war also cemented America's position as global hegemon. It also gave China a sense of crisis, rapidly undertaking modern military reforms. Embarking on the path of modernization,